Hammer's first Dracula film was a huge success, but the first sequel, Brides of Dracula, didn't have Christopher Lee, although Peter Cushing returned as Van Helsing. It's definitely worth checking out, and I don't mean to skip over it, but it's not really part of the Dracula series, as far as the character Dracula is concerned. So we're moving ahead to Dracula, Prince of Darkness. It opens with a recap from the ending of the first movie, similar to the Rocky movies. This further reinforces that this is a direct continuation of Horror of Dracula, and Brides of Dracula is somewhat irrelevant. Peter Cushing, unfortunately, is not in it, and he's not in many of the Draculas from this point on. He was busy at the time performing consistently as the Mad Doctor in Hammer's Frankenstein series. This also happens to be the last Dracula film directed by Terence Fisher. The plot follows a group of English tourists in the Carpathian Mountains. While at a pub, they meet a priest who warns them not to go near the castle. Ooh, what castle could that be? Well, of course, that's exactly where they end up. It's an old cliché, travelers having to spend the night at a creepy place. It goes all the way back to the old dark house, and it follows all the way through to the modern slasher genre, where young people are on vacation or out exploring and go somewhere they shouldn't. The castle is inhabited by Dracula's servant, Clove, who says he always keeps the castle prepared for guests in honor of his master. And they all think to themselves, Dracula must have been a good guy.
What a marvelous man he must have been.
Count Dracula.
Count Dracula.
Since when did Dracula have a servant anyway? Clove wasn't in the first movie, but it doesn't matter. Like the Universal films, the continuity is loose. Anyway, his true intention is to resurrect his master. He murders one of the guests and hangs his body above Dracula's coffin. It's a creepy scene which plays out like an evil ritual. Then he slits his throat as the blood pours over Dracula's ashes. Then Dracula begins to take shape. It's an awesome transformation. Dracula is back and more badass than before. He's a sexual predator, preying on women and then tossing them aside when he's bored. He's the pimp of the undead. He never says a single word the whole movie. Supposedly, Christopher Lee hated the dialogue, so he refused to speak any of it. I'm not sure how much of that is true, but it's not too out of the ordinary because he doesn't speak during the second half of the first movie either. Once his vampire side comes out, he becomes a mute monster. Christopher Lee didn't like being in the sequels. He felt Hammer was wasting their opportunity with the Dracula character because they were writing the stories first and then trying to fit in Dracula after the fact. And in general, they had very little to do with Bram Stoker's novel. For a sequel, it has a bit more references to the novel than you'd expect. Certain things that were dropped from the first movie are present here. Renfield is in it, even though it's a small part, and we only know it's him because of his interest in a fly. Also, the scene where Dracula cuts open his chest and makes his female victim drink his blood is also from the novel. And before, no Dracula movie ever attempted to portray this gruesome concept. There's also a horrific staking scene. In the final scene, Dracula fights the hero on a frozen castle moat while the ice cracks around them. They had to come up with a new way to kill Dracula instead of sunlight again, so they established that a vampire can also be killed by running water. Yeah, water.
Running water.
You could probably kill a vampire by looking at him funny. So the Prince of Darkness is trapped under ice and lay frozen until the next films, which were becoming more frequent. Final thoughts. The storyline is very simple, and it's not as groundbreaking as the first one, but in some ways, I like it better. There's a lot of suspense building up to Dracula's resurrection, and the tension is consistent the whole movie. It doesn't try too hard to top the first one, it just keeps it steady and tense and comes out being a great solid sequel.